after as well. Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Each name has a meaning. Each name signifies a nature of Allah the Almighty which no one shares or is compared to Allah in it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just before the break, we were talking about the many deaths in the polytheist soldier and army. And among the very prominent ones was, of course, Abu Jahl, Amr ibn Hisham. His name was Abu Al-Hakam, and which means that the father of Al-Hakam, or the wisdom, or the wise one. And it was changed to Abu Jahl, the father of ignorance, because of him rejecting Islam. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, one of the first to embrace Islam, and one of the richest merchants of Islam, and one of the 10 that the Prophet said, ﷺ, that they are in paradise. He says, and he's reporting what took place on the day of Badr, I was in the row, and to the left and right of me, there were 2 youngsters. They were about 17, 18 years old. You know, in a battlefield, you would like to be surrounded by strong men so that you can guarantee that your back is protected or your sides are protected. But when you're surrounded by weak people, then you have to pay attention to the 4 directions around you. And it's the sword and the spear that you're fighting with. So he didn't like this. He wasn't at ease because of these 2 youngsters beside him. He said, what are they going to do? So one of them whispered in his ear, the one on his right. He said, Uncle, do you know Abu Jahl? So he told him, yes, I do. Why? He said, well, I heard that he harmed the Prophet ﷺ, he slandered him, and he used to abuse him when he was in Mecca. And I swore by Allah, if I see him, if I set eyes on him, I'm going to slaughter him. And the other one on his left whispered again. He didn't want his friend to hear. Uncle, do you know Abu Jahl? He said, yes, why? And he said exactly the same thing. So when they said this, he felt relieved. He said, well, now I'm between 2 great warriors with a target, with an ambition that is second to none. So he was at ease. And when the fight began, they were fighting. And the minute he saw Abu Jahl on his ride, he told them, this is Abu Jahl, go and get him. Immediately, one of them jumped at him and chopped his leg off. And that was Mu'adh ibn Amr ibn al-Jamuh. May Allah be pleased with him and with his father. His father, by the way, is Amr ibn al-Jamuh, who used to limp. And his story will come to us on the Battle of Uhud. He was an old man. And his sons would not allow him to go to Badr. Said, no, you're an old man and you are limping. One of your knees is not functioning. So you stay, you cannot fight. And this guy fought until he died on the Battle of Uhud, and he is in Jannah, as we are told by the Prophet ﷺ. So his son, Mu'adh ibn Amr ibn al-Jamuh, he chopped off the leg of Abu Jahl. His son, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, chopped off his hand, his arm. And they went elsewhere, engaging in other fights. Imam al-Dhahabi in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala tells us that Mu'adh is saying about himself, I fought the rest of the day with my hand dangling with a sort of skin, part of the skin. And I kept on fighting and fighting and fighting, but when I felt that it's a hurdle, an obstacle in my way, I just put my foot on it and, cracked it out.
It annoyed him.
It annoyed him. Yeah. And then he fought the rest of the day with one arm. Al-Dhahabi says that, by Allah, this is bravery. Not someone with a thorn or a needle gets into him, he starts to cry and shout and moan. The other one was Mu'awwidh ibn al-Afra. And he also had to hit Abu Jahl and wound him severely, and he died in the battle also of Badr, as one of the reports say.
Both of the youngsters were both killed also?
No. Mu'adh lived. Mu'adh lived. And the other one of the reports say that he lived, and the other say no, he was a martyr in the battle of Badr. Actually, they themselves did not kill Abu Jahl, but they wounded him severely, and he fell on the ground. And the one who killed him was Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the close one of the Prophet ﷺ. And he narrated lots and lots of hadiths, because he was close to the Prophet, and he used to carry his sandals, and he used to serve the Prophet ﷺ. He was a shepherd in Mecca at a very early time. And we are also told that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was so thin to the extent that the companions used to laugh of his thinness. In one hadith, the Prophet asked him to get something from a tree. So he climbed up the tree, and while he was up in the tree, the companions were almost on their back laughing. So the Prophet said, what are you laughing for? The Prophet of Allah, look at his legs. It's like, this is from my side, not from the hadith. It's like billiard acoustics. It's so thin. It's so funny. The Prophet ﷺ corrected the way they look at things. Don't be deceived by how things look. He told them that they are thin, but by Allah, they are heavier at the side of Allah than the mountain of Uhud. Because they carry a man of faith and belief. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was very tiny, but with a very strong heart. He saw Abu Jahl lying on the floor, and Abu Jahl used to beat him and used to torture him and used to mock out of him.
That was in Mecca.
That was in Mecca, of course. The hadith tells us that when he saw him, he told him, "Are you Abu Jahl?" And Abu Jahl looked at him in his wounds and said, "Are you the shepherd?" So he remembered him. So he told him, "By Allah, you are disgraced by the swords of Allah." And he said, "Well, what do you have to blame me?" Still in defiance while dying.
SubhanAllah.
What do you blame me for? My people killed me. So what's wrong in that? I was killed in the battlefield. So the hadith said he climbed his chest just to show you how big Abu Jahl was and how tiny Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He climbed over his chest. The guy was lying on the ground, and he held his head and he chopped his head off. This was the end of Abu Jahl. Also, one of the leaders of Quraysh was Umayyah ibn Khalaf. As we know, Umayyah ibn Khalaf was a vicious leader. He used to torture. Do you remember?
The early days, the early slaves?
Yes. Who in particular?
Bilal.
Yeah. The Abyssinian slave. The only one who would not give in. All the companions who were tortured, as Ammar ibn Yasir, may Allah be pleased with him, and with his father Yasir, says that they all gave in. After being tortured, they said, "Okay, we don't like Islam, we don't like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we don't like the Quran." And this was okay, because it was revealed in the Quran. Ammar ibn Yasir once came to the Prophet crying. So he said, "Ammar, what's wrong?" And we know that Ammar's mother was the first martyr in Islam, Sumayyah. She was also a slave, and she was killed, and the killer was Abu Jahl himself. He put a spear into her and killed her while being tortured. So Ammar ibn Yasir, who was also used to be tortured with his father, with his mother, came crying to the Prophet in Mecca once. And the Prophet told him, "What's wrong?" So he said, "O Prophet of Allah, they kept on torturing me until I was out of my mind, and I had to say something bad about you." And this is blasphemy. If you say something about the Prophet ﷺ to a Muslim, this is blasphemy. And that is why when they made these cartoons mocking of the Prophet ﷺ, it was outrageous for the Muslims. Yet we do not approve of any of the demonstrations or of the violence that took place or any of the killings, because as Muslims we know that our Prophet is above all of these things, yet we know that the non-Muslims will keep on doing this forever. So we should not go down to their level. The Prophet ﷺ is praised. His name is Muhammad, the praised one. And that is why the Prophet, whenever the Jews and the non-Muslims used to curse him and say and give him names, he used to tell his companions, subhanallah, they are cursing and slandering someone, his name is praised. And this is throughout the year, throughout the whole world, and throughout time, that the Prophet ﷺ's name is always exalted and high. It's mentioned 5 times a day, everywhere in the adhan. When you say, I testify that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Ammar ibn Yasir went and said, I'm sorry, he's crying, he's in tears. They tortured me so bad, I had to say something bad about you. What was the reaction of the Prophet ﷺ? He told him, how do you find your heart? Okay, you spoke about me in a bad sense, but what was it, your intention? What's inside of your heart? He said, oh Prophet of Allah, I'm a believer, I'm a faithful man, I believe in you, I love you. My heart is calm with tranquility and the belief of Islam. So the Prophet tells him, if they go back to torture you, go back to saying what you said about me. You have you have the permission to do so. So Umayyah ibn Khalaf used to torture Bilal, and Bilal was the only one who would not give in. Everybody else did what Ammar did, except Bilal. They tortured him so bad, yet he never ever accepted to say anything bad about Islam or to reject Islam. And then Umayyah ibn Khalaf with his son Ali were there. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who was also, we spoke about earlier, gathered the shields of those whom he killed. And in Islam, if you kill someone, you have the right to take his belongings. So these shields mean money, and to these poor Muslims. So he was having these shields, and he met Umayyah ibn Khalaf hiding in the midst of the fighting. So he said, Abdurrahman, you know that I'm a very wealthy man, so as a prisoner, I'm much better for you than these shields. Leave these shields and take me as a prisoner, and I'll pay you whatever you want. He just wanted to save his life. So he said, okay, it's a good deal. He threw the shields, and he went with Ali ibn Umayyah and Umayyah ibn Khalaf. And he went with them. And as they were going, Bilal ibn Rabah saw him. And then he remembered. He said, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, I shall not live if he lives. I shall not live if he lives. I shall not live if he lives. And he started calling the Muslims. Umayyah ibn Khalaf, the enemy of Allah. Abdurrahman ibn Auf told him, Bilal, for God's sake, please, this is my prisoner. Don't do this to me. He's my prisoner. I'm protecting him. And he said, I shall not live if he lives. And he called the people from Ansar and also other slaves who used to be tortured. And they started by killing Ali, the son of Umayyah. And Umayyah burst into tears and started crying. He knew that he was going to die. Abdurrahman ibn Auf told him, go on the floor. Sit on the ground. He sat on the ground and he covered him with his body. But the Muslims came with the swords and they chopped him from underneath him and they killed him. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf said, may Allah have mercy on Bilal. He made me lose my shields and he made me lose my prisoners. The hell with him. I could care less about him. But I could care about the money I would have made. I'm afraid that this is all the time we have for today's program. But until we meet next time, I'll leave you inshallah fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.